Please stand clear of the doors. Por favor, manténganse alejado de las puertas.
Hello and welcome to episode 7 of Monorail Memoirs. This week we'll be discussing, has Disney World become too expensive? It will not surprise you that in recent years there have been a lot of price hikes, in part to try and bring down the crowd sizes, or at least that's what Disney says. And we're going to get into what the sort of cost would you expect for around 5 nights. We'll be looking at hotels, we'll be looking at food, we'll be looking at tickets, and we'll get into all of that. But before we do, Lauren, how are you?
I am shattered.
Shattered. Can we say that? Can we say that? Is that a word we can say? We've said it though. Why are you shattered?
Because it was my son's birthday party today. So I've been
congratulations.
Play all day.
That sounds like fun though. Did they get stuck and you had to go after them?
Yes.
To be fair though, I reckon there should be an adult version of that where you can just go and like run around and play. I think it'd be a great idea. Yeah. For anyone listening who has a business plan, let us know. I don't have any money to invest, but I want to see how well you do. No, happy days. So, what are we talking about? We're going to be really getting into sort of, what sort of numbers are we going to be talking about here? But also, one thing that's worth pointing out, folks, is there is an entire spectrum of what you could spend going to Walt Disney World. Lauren's obviously in the UK, so when you fly over here, you were looking at some flights for next year. What were the sort of numbers around that?
Yeah, so from kind of Manchester to Orlando, end of April, early May, it was looking at about £800 to £900 per person.
I mean, that's an excessive amount for our American listeners. That's for our American listeners. That's about $1,100, $1,200,
and that's with a stop.
And that's with a stop. That's not even direct.
No.
Oh, so you can go down that route, and we used to, as well, Lauren, as you know, we always used to stop en route because it was cheaper than flying direct, and that was one of the ways you could save costs. There are other ways as well, such as perhaps not going to Disney every day, and so not purchasing a ticket that's for the full length of what your stay would be. There's other options, including not staying on Disney property. There's plenty of hotels in and around the theme park areas of Orlando, and also from a transportation standpoint, you could get a flight that goes on a stop en route, or from where I am in Virginia, for me to fly down, it's probably about $200 per person return trip, but of course much closer here, so that makes sense. So this scenario that I've put together, and I've got some numbers on the right hand side of my screen that I'm going to talk about, is for a family of 4 people on a 5-day trip. This has been planned for sometime in summer, so we're talking between June, July, August sort of time frame. That's the idea, and these are a lot of rounded numbers because there cannot be specifics. But we'll go through the numbers and then we'll have a discussion as to what we think in terms of the pricing. So as a conversion rate, because about 50% of our listeners are from the UK and about 50% of our listeners are from the US, at the time of recording, $1 is about 75 pence, to give you an idea. So we're talking 3/4 of the numbers that I'll say if you want to do a quick conversion to the UK. But for a 5-day base park ticket for adults, it's about $500 each. If you've got a family of 4, of course, you got 2 adults expected, so that's $1,000 straight away. And then for children ages 3 to 9, they're about $480 each. So you're already at $2,000. You're not even started. That does differ though if you're in the UK, doesn't it, Lauren?
Yes, it does. Yeah, you can get the 14-day pass for the price of 7. And it comes with Disney's photo pass as well, which I think is well worth having that additional on there.
Yeah, the photo pass is great. And for listeners that are unaware, photo pass is basically, there are Disney photographers stationed throughout all of the parks, and all you do is they will take a photo of you, and then you scan your phone or your Apple Watch or your Magic Band, if you still use those, and it gets instantly saved into an accessible online digital folder. And then I think you have 60 days, it could be, to download the photos before they are wiped. Now, if you wish to purchase that in America, it's about $200. Whereas if you get it as part of the UK ticket base, you'll have that included for you. So I think that's a great addition. So there are some differences on the outset straight away. But worth pointing out, we're talking about a 5-day trip here. I mean, would you come from the UK for 5 days?
I think it's a long way to go for 5 days, especially if you were looking at a stop. I think that, 99.9% of the UK clientele are going to go for that 14-day period, or at least maybe 10 days. And if you do the 14-day ticket, you still get the 7 days free. So
yeah, absolutely. And the way the UK tickets work is that it does include the water parks as well by default. So it gives you options to go there, because both, as at time of speaking, both Blizzard Beach and Typhoon Lagoon are open again. So Disney can really still push the whole "we've got 6 parks" mantra. How accurate that is, I'm not overly sure, but still the 6 parks mantra. So we're already talking for our imaginary family of 4 spending 5 days in the summer. We've already spent $2,000. We haven't done anything. We've already spent $2,000. Let's talk about hotels then. So as we all know, there are 3 different scales of hotels for Disney. You've got the value resort, you've got the moderate resort, and you've got the deluxe resort. Now, Lauren and I haven't ran the numbers together before doing this, so I'm going to play a fun game. Lauren, in terms of, we're going to go from highest to lowest. In terms of a deluxe resort, so we're talking Polynesian, we're talking Grand Floridian. What do you think a price per night would be in the summer months?
I'm going to go with $700 a room.
She's actually done really well. Actually. That's quite annoying. It's between $650 and $900 a night. So I mean, but that's per night.
That's
if you're spending 5 days there, that's 4. Well, 6. Let's call it 6 nights. No. Let's call it 5 days. 5 days, 5 nights. You've already spent $4,000 if you're staying in one of the deluxe resorts. That is a lot of money.
Can I just say as well, that is literally just for your bed. There's no food included in that. It's not like an all-inclusive resort or even a bed and breakfast. That is literally your bed.
Could you imagine if Disney did an all-inclusive resort at Walt Disney World? Like, can you imagine if they converted one of the resorts to become an all-inclusive, where literally they probably wouldn't include the alcohol, because
like a Disney cruise, because that's like
a Disney cruise, but on land. And actually, the Galactic Star Cruiser, one could argue that's kind of how. But that didn't work due to its very unique and specified theming for Star Wars fans the world over, and it cost about $3,000 for a 2-day experience, so nobody was doing it.
No.
But yeah, I've had a thought process. You could take one of the Disney resorts, even if you take one of the value resorts, you make it an all-inclusive. You can afford to charge more, but it would absolutely encourage people to stay on property. I suppose the counter argument would be, well, they're going to go and buy that food anyway, and most of that food will be on Disney property. So are you actually not losing money, but are you losing out on potential profit? It's a fair question, but that was a nice little aside. That's a fascinating idea. I mean, if in the very unlikely sense that either Bob Iger or Josh D'Amaro are listening, please let us know. We've had a great idea for you. So that's a deluxe resort. So if you're staying in a deluxe resort for 5 days, talking about 5,000. Since we're playing this game, then so let's look at moderate resorts. Moderate resorts being sort of Port Orleans, Caribbean Beach. Lauren, what do you think the price per night would be in summer?
I'd say $450.
A little bit less. So looking at the ones I found, was about $400 a night, but still $400 a night. That's $2,000 for 5 days. That's an insane amount, but it is also half of the Polynesian or Grand Floridian, so like there's a big step change there, right? And then finally the Disney Value resorts. So we're talking the All Stars resorts, we're talking Pop Century. What do you think the per night rate would be for summer?
I'm saying kind of 150 to 200.
Oh no, you're not going to get a room in Disney for 150 anymore. Sheesh, that was a while ago. Probably about 275 would be, and again, this is for the value resort. We haven't stayed at an All-Star Sports in a very long, or any of the All-Stars in a very long time, but we used to stay there. We've probably done 3, maybe 4 stays there in total.
Yeah.
The walls, paper thin. You can hear everything that's going on in the next room, whether you want to be hearing it or not. You can hear everything that's going on in the next room. There's no ambiguity. And it is literally just a room. And because you don't have the monorail. Granted, okay, you do have the Skyliner at Pop Century, but if you talk about the All-Star resorts, you don't have the monorail. You don't have any of the boat access. You are literally either going to drive yourself or get a bus everywhere. $275 a night seems like a lot of money.
And may I add as well, with how you said the Pop Century has the Skyliner, I know that is still a value resort, but it is more expensive than those all-star resorts as well. So you do have kind of like internal tiers within the tiers, because kind of like all-star sports, movies, music, they're all kind of like the very, very like lowest end. And then you've got the art of animation and the pop century that kind of top end that, really.
You're absolutely right, and it's worth pointing out, depending on what time of year people go as well, a lot of the all-star resorts are used for school trips or cheer competitions or flag football contests. And so, if you're not interested about getting woken up by a cheer squad at 7 a.m, practicing outside of your room, you might want to think about other options. But this is only talking about hotels on Disney. I mean, there are other options of staying off property. There is a whole range of price points to stay elsewhere within the Orlando area. If you want the real top end, the deluxe end, you can think about the Four Seasons. You can think about the Gaylord Palms. Like these are pinnacle resorts for the city of Orlando, or at least the tourist area. They're pinnacle areas. You've also got Motel 8. You've also got, then you've got things in between. You've got things more like Holiday Inn or Hilton. And so there's a whole range. So a lot of it can be sort of whatever you want to spend. But here's one of the kickers. If you stay off Disney property and you wish to drive to the parks, you have to pay for parking every day, which is currently $35 a day.
And that's not if you want preferred either. If you want to get a better parking space, it's over $50.
You're right, but the preferred parking, and having seen the preferred parking, but it's if you think of how far you're going to walk around a Disney park in a day, you may be saving, okay, granted, in some cases you are saving quite a bit because you don't necessarily have to get the Disney parking tram to get there. But in some places like Epcot, if you get there early enough, literally you're saving a few $100 yards and you just paid an extra $15, $20. Baffling. But some people have got the money where it doesn't matter to them. So fair enough. Although what is interesting is seeing the cars that are in the preferred parking lot, because they don't all look like Bugattis and Rolls Royce or, whatever. But yeah, so for the hotel option, if you're staying in a deluxe resort, you can be looking around the $4,000 mark, moderate resort around $2,000, and then a value resort looking around between $1,300 to $1,400. And this is just for 5 nights. That's insane. Food. Let's talk about food. So in recent years, Laura and I have approached Disney food very differently. Lauren, how do you approach food in Disney?
Very scarcely.
Expand.
So for a bit of background, I work as a nurse in the NHS. We don't really, get a heck of a lot of money. I've got, a family of 4 to feed. So, our budgets are very, very different. We're at very different times in our lives, aren't we, Cameron?
Yeah, slightly.
So I've got a lot more kind of outgoings and not as many ingoings. So I very much take food in Disney as a treat, a kind of one-time thing. What do I really, really want at that moment? And what do I think I will get the most out of my money for? It's not necessarily, I quite fancy that, I'll get it. Because an ice cream is $6.
$6.50 as of last time I went.
An ice cream, like a Magnum or a Feast, that sort of kind of tier of ice cream.
Could you imagine if we made a Feast in the shape of a Mickey, though? A Feast shaped of Mickey would be incredible. And again, Bob Iger, Josh Tomorrow, if you're listening, these are ideas, note them down.
So yeah, I approach snacks and food in Disney very, very cautiously. I generally am a packer in terms of food, so I'll pack kind of like little snack boxes for the children and obviously for adults as well if we fancy them. We'll bring a sandwich in for lunch, or we'll go out to kind of like a Perkins or an IHOP. For our English listeners, they're kind of like Brewers Fayre kind of establishments. They're not the highest end. They're very much just one up from fast food. But albeit they're lovely, they're nice, but you're not paying those Disney prices. However, it's the hassle of getting out of the park and then having to get back into the park. And especially when we're talking about Magic Kingdom, we've just talked about how, convoluted it is to kind of get into Magic Kingdom. So you are paying for that convenience, but for me, it is just chicken tenders and chips, well, fries, you can get them anywhere.
So Laura makes some really good points, and I remember the days where we would make our sandwiches beforehand. We'd carry our sandwiches around. I would regularly be the pack mule, and that was fine. It was a role I didn't mind doing. In recent times, due to very fortunate circumstances, I do have slightly more disposable income. I don't have children, which helps. I have 4 cats, so they do take up some time. But as a result, I have been eating more on Disney property, and I have been, just before we went to record with this podcast, I was explaining about how, well, last time I was at the Riviera and I was at Topolino's Terrace, and Lauren was just shaking her head. She couldn't believe it. For what it's worth, if you do go to Topolino's Terrace, try and get it so that you hit the Epcot fireworks at 9 o'clock, because a lot of people will go out and stand on the balcony and watch. I did that for a little bit, and then I realized sort of not as interested. So I went back to my seat, and it just so happened that my table was positioned. I could see the fireworks from my seat whilst I ate my filet mignon. So or fillet, as they insist on calling it over here. But yeah, fantastic. So I would recommend Topolino's Terrace. But as a result, I've been eating more in the last couple of years in Disney establishments, and it is expensive. There's no two ways about it. That bill at Topolino's Terrace, I think for 2 of us, where we had a drink each, dessert and main course after tip, was about $180, $190. That's a lot of money. There's no two ways about it. In addition, if you think, when you start adding, the cost of having children on as well, if you were to eat, and granted, of course, the children's portions are always smaller and cheaper, but you're instantly adding hundreds of dollars a day onto your cost. Now, if you just did quick service meals, you'd probably be, a quick service meal for 4 people, you could probably get that at around the sort of $75 mark.
Yeah, I think the last time that we went, a year or so ago, we did do a couple, of quick service restaurants, but we kind of did it where we shared quite a lot of it, because my children are only very small anyway. I've only got a 2- and a 4-year-old.
And American portion sizes,
and American portion sizes.
Let's be very clear.
But then that allowed us to be able to get a dessert as well. So it's kind of what you prioritise. If you are a savoury person and you do have a big appetite, then yeah, fair enough. But always consider the sharing option as well. And just another kind of money saving tip is getting the popcorn buckets. They're fantastic for money saving. So a normal popcorn in the cardboard sleeves is around, I think it's about $6 or $7 now, something like that. But you can get a plastic kind of commemorative bucket for around $12 to $15, I think, for your first purchase. But then refills after that are only about $2.50.
Yeah.
So I think personally it's really worth it. The popcorn's ace in Disney, and also it's great for the children. If you're in a line, you can just put the lid on. And you're good to go then. It's fantastic.
Completely agreed. And try and remember to do it day one.
Yeah.
That's how you maximize your value. But you're right. The eating thing, you could easily, if there was 2 of you who like food, and by that I don't just mean portion sizes, but I mean quality, I mean experience around food. We ate at Tepanedo, which is the in the Japanese pavilion. That was a fantastic meal, but even that was about $160. So the point is, you can easily go overboard if you wish. We're just going to come into the final section, talk a little bit about transportation, because as we mentioned, flights from different parts of the world are going to cost more. But let's just talk about a second between using sort of the ground transport options versus like rental cars. So a rental car, it's going to set you back about $100 a day, really, depending on what you get and depending on if you're part of any membership programs for any of the big suppliers. So if you're going for 5 days, let's look at $400, $500 plus your parking fees if you're staying off site. That adds up so quickly. Whereas if you get a Uber from MCO, which is Orlando International Airport, to your resort staying on Disney, it's not going to be cheap. It's going to be $60, $70, $80 depending on time of day. But you can save a lot of money compared to having to purchase a rental car if you are content on accepting that you are going to have longer times to wait for things like the Disney buses. Even if you are staying at places like the Grand Floridian, but you want to go to Animal Kingdom, it's a bus. So you just have to be aware of that. And if you're willing to sacrifice the efficiency of having your own vehicle for a little bit of saving in costs, that is certainly an option. But like Lauren, I don't ever imagine you not having a car going to Disney.
No, definitely not. I mean, I usually stay in a villa, because we do go with quite a few other people, which again makes it slightly cheaper as well. Last time that we went with 3 friends, and that brought the cost down massively to about, for the whole 2 weeks, kind of $400 a person for the villa. So that makes it miles more doable than £400 a night at a moderate resort. It's what you value, really. But yeah, I couldn't imagine doing it without a car, just simply for also just other things to do, like the outlet malls and even just the flea markets or
do the flea markets still exist?
Yeah. Walmart,
Jesus.
Target, all those typical American things that I know that our American listeners will be saying, why is she excited going to Walmart? That's like a British person saying they're excited to go to Asda. But when you're in a different place, it's exciting and it's new. So I couldn't imagine going there and not being able to do that or having to pay for the privilege.
It's a really good point. Our American listeners will be surprised to hear that Brits find it really interesting to go to Walmart. Now, depending on where you are in the country, depends on why you go to Walmart. If you're in most of the US, you go to Walmart because you need groceries and you go to Walmart. If you're in Central Florida, you go to Walmart just go people watching. It's fantastic. The sights you see, and then there are loads of Facebook pages on, overheard in Walmart or seen in Walmart and what have you. Like, if you have a spare 10 minutes, it's worth a rabbit hole to dig down. But as we bring to this conclusion, then it's something really important to get across is you can spend as much as you want, but there are minimums to spend. There between getting your tickets, which again we said was around the $500 per adult in this scenario. Again, for children about $480, which is a lot of money. Let's be clear here. You need a ticket from when they turn I think 3. Yes. So as long as they are still 2, you're fine. But you need a ticket once they turn 3. But if we look at some sort of estimated costs here, if you're staying in a deluxe resort, let's say 5 days, again, family of 4, your tickets are $2,000. Your hotel's going to be $4,500, $5,000. Your food, you could spend as much or as little as you wanted. Transport's going to vary by people, but the rough maths I've got here with, even if you're not eating at premier restaurants, but you do choose to get your own rental car for that time, you're looking at the best part of $10,000 for 5 days, which again for our British listeners is about £7,500. That is a lot of money, and that by the way doesn't necessarily include getting to Orlando, because again it depends from where in the world that you come. So that's a lot of money. With that said, then, Lauren, is Disney World too expensive?
I think it's getting that way. I mean, I've always said that I couldn't be outpriced for Disney, and now I'm worried that I might.
Yeah, and that is a really fair concern.
And that is someone who absolutely loves Disney. We're a dual income household, so we're not kind of on the breadline. We're not, a minimum wage or anything like that. We do earn quite an all right amount of money, for where we live and kind of our ages and things. But yeah, it's getting undoable even for us.
And that is the headline point here. It has become so expensive as Disney continues to raise prices because they say the idea is to reduce the crowd size, because that's one of the biggest complaints is it's too crowded. The queues were too long for certain rides. So by raising the cost of entry and the barriers to entry, what you're doing is you're decreasing the number of people that will attend and you're decreasing the frequency that people will attend. That's the idea. But the crowds are as busy as they've ever been. I have no reason to believe that tactic has worked, apart from to line Disney's parks and experiences pockets with more money. So, has Disney World become too expensive? My problem with the phrasing of the question, and we came up with the question, but my problem with the phrasing of the question is, has it become too expensive? A lot of it is down to A, your means, what you can afford, and B, what you consider to be an appropriate sacrifice. And I think there are people like me, like you, who until we literally cannot afford it, we will continue to go. So with that in mind, ladies and gentlemen, that is bring a conclusion to episode 7. As the ticker across the bottom says, if you do like this content, please consider subscribing. Lauren's doing her finger point thing that she always does. Follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Monorail Memoirs, and our email address, if you have any thoughts, comments, or queries, is monorailmemoirs@gmail.com. Alternatively, put something in the comment section of YouTube and we will get back to you. Thank you very much for watching, one and all. And as always, please stand clear of the doors. Bye, everybody.
Bye.